1 month ago, voters nationwide elected Donald Trump to be the 47th president of the United States. It left people on both sides of the aisle looking for answers, including churchgoers. WIFR's Anthony Ferretti talks with people on both sides of the pews and how this is not only a political issue, but a spiritual issue.
Many people turn to the church for guidance. Some Democrats are stunned at the reality of a second Trump presidency, while some Republicans struggle to respond to Trump's stance on certain issues.
This isn't political. This is real life now.
Father David Beauvais is a retired pastor but speaks at St. James Church weekly. The Sunday after the election, people turn to him for hope by taking the gospel and applying its teachings.
We have to advocate for the least of our brothers so that the people who have less resources don't get overwhelmed by the people who have so many resources.
He uses Catholic social teaching to apply the scriptures to the world we live in today, including solidarity, unity, and life and dignity of the human person.
The challenge is to live the faith. And if we do, I think we can have an influence in our culture.
Beauvais says this message impacted each churchgoer regardless of who they voted for.
I have to worry about, am I fulfilling the Great Commandment?
Dick Kunert says he's using what he's been taught in the church to love as many people as possible, regardless of who's in office.
To serve people in our lives, to give dignity and respect to people in our lives, and love as many people as you possibly can.
I believe there's hope.
Meanwhile, Bill Morrissey says the issues on his mind includes Trump's stance on abortion and the Abraham Accords, which Trump signed in 2020 to normalize relations between Israel and several Arab states.
If we can reduce war, we can put some of that money into social work. I'm with you 100% on helping people.
The final principle in Catholic social teaching is care for God's creation, which is looking after our home and, more importantly, our environment.
Thank you, Anthony. And Father Beauvais adds we should overcome if we are fearful because God provided a wonderful country for us.